do you feel like you might have some blocks in your third eye or some filters that have been placed there because of societal programming or whatever? I'm going to share a multidimensional chakra scan that I just did with a client in case it helps you on your journey as well. The reason that I share these sessions with everybody is if you have similar energetics or things that have happened in your soul contract or different timeline versions of you, it'll unlock things for you in your Akashic records. So when I go into his energy field, I see a possum, and it's a mama possum with babies on her back. And the possum was representative of him being a very caring and compassionate person, always wanting to support others and lift them up. And the possum asked me to follow her. And so I grabbed her hand, and she was like standing on 2 feet. And I said, you can just crawl on the ground so your babies aren't like hanging on. And so she went on the ground, and I'm following her. And then we go to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. And I asked her higher self, what are we doing here? And they said, this represents the sweetness of life. And a combination with the possum, sometimes he doesn't give enough attention and time and energy to self because we're wanting to support people in whatever ways we can. And that's a beautiful thing, but we have to make sure that we're filling our own cup, and so that we can spill over what we have for others. And it was so funny because after I sent him his voice note summary, he told me that he was wearing a shirt that said Peacemaker on it. I was like, yeah, that's a big synchronicity. Then I go into a different section of his field, and then his 8-year-old self came forward. I'm not going to get into like super deep about what those things are about, just out of respect for the inner child healing that we did. But we were at this big giant lake, and he was trying to skip these stones, the 8-year-old, and I came in and I said, hey, do you want me to show you how to do it? And he said, yes. And I said, I used to try and do this when I was a kid, and I wasn't the best at it necessarily. I said, but because we're in the etheric realm, I can show you how to do it. And I skipped one, and it went all the way across the lake, and he was like, whoa. And as me and him were talking, he was kind of getting upset, and obviously he wanted to talk about something, because I asked him, I said, did you call me in here? Is there something that you wanted to speak about? And he said, yes. And I said, well, let's go somewhere that's a little, more fun. And we ended up going to a merry-go-round that we were sitting on, and he was explaining to me some father wounds that he had, and not feeling kind of like seen and heard in a couple different ways. But anyway, it caused some guilt as well. Like, he was thinking that it was his fault, and I was explaining to him that sometimes people are going through their own trauma, or they don't know how to express themselves or how to process through stuff. And because we're empathic and compassionate people, sometimes we take that on as our own guilt, or we feel like we need to heal the other person in order for them to show up like we need them to in our lives. And I said, the only person that can do that is them, though. That's so incredibly sweet that you have those like sentiments towards him. I said, but at the end of the day, people have to heal themselves, but we can still show up in love and support them. And after we got done talking, I said, is there anywhere that you want to go and have some fun? And I said, oh, I know where you should go. I said, I was doing a chakra scan for a different client, which I'm going to make a video about. And we ended up going to the dinosaur realm, where dinosaurs are still alive and breathing. And it was a very interesting experience. And I said, how about we get to use some ice cream on the way? And he was super excited about that. So I ended up splitting myself into 2 different versions. And I said, this is the other Sage. And he was like, I said, she's going to take you to go have fun. Then I go to a different section of his field, and I'm walking through this cavern, and there's all these bats everywhere. And there was this loud roar, like super, super loud. And it was giving energy of me not wanting me to be there, but I couldn't see it. And I'm walking, all of a sudden this blinding white light shows up, and then this different timeline version of him comes forward, and he's half man, half aquatic being. One half of his face kind of looked like a pufferfish, but almost like made out of coral. It was very like hard and dense on one side, very colorful, very fun. And I asked him, what's going on in here? That creature, that being, was almost a guardian in his third eye chakra, and it was keeping certain types of magic out. And I said, okay, can you explain to me why that filter is there, or why the guardian is here? And then all of a sudden he showed me Power Rangers, and there's this lady on there, her name is Rita Repulsa, and his inner children had seen her as a witch. She's not a witch, but he very gives that energy. My version said that his inner children classified magic in 2 different categories. There was either superhero or there was witch. And so I asked his 8-year-old to come meet me in the caverns, and I said, hey, can you tell me what's going on with this witch stuff? And he said, witches are scary. And I said, okay, thank you so much for letting me know. And then he went back to the dinosaur dimension. And I asked this different timeline version, the aquatic being, if he could show me if there's any timelines, because the frequency that I was picking up on was that's not just stuff coming from this incarnation. This not just programming from society about witches. It runs deeper. And I said, are there any timelines that I need to know about? And then he pulled up kind of this picture so I could see. And I could see a husband, and he was holding his wife, and she had passed. And apparently so she had a disease that could not be cured. Okay, this was like in the 1700s, not exactly during the Salem witch trials, but around that time period in history. And he had went to a medicine woman in this city and she brought all these herbs and like tonics over and tried to heal her, but unfortunately she still passed. And then he blamed her and called her a witch and that she was evil, and was saying, I don't want to have anything to do with magic again. So a vow was spoken over his soul contract in that timeline, but it was also having rollover effects in multitudes of different lifetimes. And I said, you're not blocked from magic completely. Like, you still have a lot of access, but you're not able to access at your full capacity because of this current of witches being evil. And I asked the higher self, I said, can I speak to him in this different timeline? She said no. She said, he's gonna call you a witch and he's not gonna listen to anything you say. She said that he needs to talk to him. So my client in this timeline needs to talk to that timeline, man to man, because he was going to be able to help him work through this and release that karmic lesson or that karmic wound. What was really interesting is the wife asked to speak to me. Her name was Sarah. And she said, can you please ask Daniel to help him heal, because he's been holding on to so much shame and guilt and loss and grief. And part of her soul fragment had been keeping watch over him like a guardian. And she said, so we can both find peace together in the etheric realms. And I said, absolutely. Then I go to a different section and I'm on I see a tire swing, and there's a sprite, not like the soda, but like a creature, a sprite in the tire swing. And I showed up as my fairy form. He was like, oh, are you a fairy? And I was like, yeah, you're a sprite. And he was like, yeah. And his name was Finn. And I pulled out this telescope, a golden telescope, and he was looking through it. And it helped him see my client in this timeline, and in multitudes of timelines if you wanted to. And he said, ooh, can I keep this? And I said, yeah, sure. So he was looking through the telescope at my client, and he was checking his energetics, and he was saying that his chi inside of his chest was not moving correctly, and he needed better air circulation. But also there was like crystalline energy in there, probably from the stuff coming from inner child and that other timeline, and maybe some other things too, but a lot of like shame and guilt and loss and grief. And so we needed to get that back flowing so that he could utilize his magic as he was helping his inner child heal in this different timeline. Different tips as far as like checking your air vents at home, or vacuuming if you have a lot of animals, doing breathing exercises, qigong or reiki or light language specifically for your lungs is really beneficial. Last thing that I saw was a staff, and it had a turtle shell that was hanging from it, and to me that was giving, we might have some shamanic ancestry. They also mentioned something about him having lightning magic, which I utilize sometimes when I'm trying to frequency read within people's soul contracts or Akashic records. And I told him researching Thor or Odin can really help you tap into that. And I said that we got to work on taking that filter lens off of this different timeline version of you that was saying witches are scary. I would love to hear in the comments if this resonated with you, if you learned something new today, and if you would like your own multidimensional chakra scan so you can understand yourself on deeper levels. You can go to my profile and click, or check the comments or the description box below.